Manhattan's financial district was drowning in a cold, metallic rain the morning Richard Sterling decided his wife no longer belonged in the life he was building. Inside the glass-walled boardroom of Sterling Dynamics, the city lights flickered across polished marble as Sarah Cross sat across from the man who had risen on her talent and her silence. Richard pushed the divorce papers toward her with the same ease he used when signing investor contracts. "You walk away with the Honda," he said, adjusting his cufflinks. "I walk away with the company." Sarah didn't flinch, but the tightness in her jaw betrayed the blow. The code he claimed as his. The home she paid for. 10 years of work erased with a sentence. For the first time she met his eyes. "You're certain you've taken everything from me, Richard?" He gave a short, dismissive laugh. "There's nothing left for you to hold on to." But down on the street, a convoy of black cars was already cutting through the rain. Vehicles recognized only by people who understood old money, true power, and the name Blackwood. And in that silent moment, Sarah realized Richard had made one fatal mistake. He never checked the part of her life she never offered him. What happens when the man who destroyed her discovers who she really is? For more gripping tales like this, subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales and hit like to help the story reach others. The storm had barely lifted when Sarah stepped out of the building, and the city greeted her with the same indifference she had felt sitting across from the man who once swore he would build a life with her. But as she pushed through the revolving doors of Sterling Dynamics, a sharp voice cut through the rain. "Ms. Cross." He turned. A man in a black coat held out a leather folio. His expression was unreadable, the kind typically worn by people who handled affairs far above ordinary salaries. "Your car is waiting." "I didn't call a car," Sarah said. "It wasn't a request," he replied, stepping aside as a second man opened the rear door of a sleek black sedan. Inside, the warm glow of the cabin contrasted sharply with the storm outside. A figure sat in the back seat, broad-shouldered, motionless, yet carrying a presence that reached her before his voice did. "Get in, Sarah." Her breath caught. That voice, low, steady, and unmistakably familiar, came from a man she had never met but had carried in her pocket for years in the form of a number she was too afraid to call. She slid into the seat. The door shut, sealing her inside a world that smelled of leather, cedar, and quiet danger. Alexander Blackwood turned toward her, the gold of the streetlights catching in his hazel eyes. Her eyes mirrored. He looked older than she expected, sharper, like someone who'd carved his place in the world by force and consequence. "You didn't tell me he put you out like this," Alexander said. Sarah swallowed hard. "I didn't want to be a burden." "Family isn't a burden," he replied. "And anyone who believes they can strip my sister of everything she has will learn the cost of that mistake." The car pulled away from the curb, gliding through Manhattan traffic with practiced smoothness. Sarah held the folio he'd given her, her hands still trembling from the confrontation upstairs. "I don't need revenge," she whispered. "I just needed someone to see me." "I see you," Alexander said. "But he needs to see you too, properly. And he will. On the day he assumes he's untouchable." The car turned down Fifth Avenue, the city opening before them like a stage preparing for its final act. "Tell me everything," he said. And she did. The late nights coding while Richard slept. The promotion she turned down for him. The way he weaponized her loyalty, her silence, her desire to belong. How he'd convinced everyone in the company that she was unstable just so he could take credit for her life's work. By the time she finished, the storm had quieted, but Alexander's expression had darkened into something far more dangerous than anger. "He built his empire on your back," Alexander murmured. "Then cut the rope when he reached the top." "I didn't matter to him," Sarah said softly. "No," Alexander corrected. "You mattered too much. Enough that your brilliance threatened the story he told the world about himself." The car slowed before a towering hotel. As they stepped inside, the grandeur of the marble lobby and crystal chandeliers felt alien, too elegant for someone who hours ago had been tossed aside like an inconvenience. Yet the staff greeted Alexander with a reverence reserved for royalty. "Suite prepared as requested, Mr. Blackwood." Sarah followed him into a high-floor penthouse where the city stretched in every direction. For the first time in years, she felt air in her lungs. "You'll stay here," Alexander said. "You'll rebuild your strength. Then we make decisions." But sleep didn't find her easily. Her mind kept replaying Richard's voice, casual and indifferent, as if discarding her was nothing more than reorganizing a file cabinet. By morning, Alexander had already assembled a small team. Legal experts, analysts, people who operated in spaces most corporations never realized existed. They filled the penthouse living area with quiet efficiency, screens glowing, documents spread out like maps of a war they were preparing to wage. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked. Alexander didn't look up from the file. "Because injustice multiplies when left alone. And because the world will not define my sister by a man who fed on her genius." She took the seat beside him, her eyes scanning the pages he slid toward her. Financial records, patent filings, email chains. Richard had been careful, but not careful enough for a Blackwood investigation. "He thinks he's untouchable," Alexander said. "He thinks the rules bend to accommodate him. We will show him that consequences do not negotiate." For days they worked in tandem. Alexander's team dissected the company from the inside out, uncovering misappropriations Richard believed were invisible. Meanwhile, Sarah walked them through the architecture of the system she had built. Her system, the one Richard had stolen and presented as his masterpiece. At night, after the team left, Sarah stood by the window overlooking the pulsing lights of the city. She could see Sterling Dynamics from the penthouse, a glowing tower that had taken years of her life and thrown back nothing but silence. Alexander joined her. "Does it hurt to look at it?" "I'm not afraid of it anymore," she said. "I just want the truth to stand on its own." "It will," he said. "But the truth is quieter than spectacle. And someone like Richard only understands spectacle." The plan came together with the precision of a storm forming off the coast. Slow building pressure, gathering force, then a single crack of thunder. Sterling Dynamics announced a major partnership event. Investors, press, industry leaders. Perfect arena. Alexander secured an invitation easily. Money opened the kind of doors Richard preferred to pretend he had built himself. But the true shock came when the guest list was updated. Co-chair, Blackwood Innovations. Sarah Cross Blackwood. The name alone caused murmurs to ripple through the tech sphere. The night of the event, the ballroom buzzed with anticipation. Chandeliers glittered overhead, and every seat was filled with someone convinced they were witnessing the next big step in cybersecurity. Richard stepped onto the stage with the confidence of a man who believed the world adored him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we stand on the edge of a revolution, one I ushered in after years of personal sacrifice." His words washed over the room, polished, rehearsed, empty. Sarah watched from the side entrance, the dim gold light casting a steady glow over her expression. Not nervous, not vengeful, just ready. When her name was announced, the room shifted like a tide turning. Richard froze mid-sentence. His smile faltered. His fingers tightened on the microphone. Sarah walked onto the stage with calm dignity, the audience following her every step. "Thank you," she said. "I won't take much of your time. I'm here only for clarity." Richard forced a laugh. "This is unexpected. But of course, all contributions are appreciated." "You stole my work," Sarah said simply. Gasps rippled across the hall. "You claimed my architecture," she continued. "My design. My years of research. And you built a company on a lie." Richard's face drained of color. "Security. No," Alexander's voice boomed from the front row. "Let the world hear her." Screens lit up behind them, projecting files Richard thought he had buried, timestamps showing authorship, emails written in Sarah's voice. Proof layered upon proof, each revelation slicing through the facade he had spent years polishing. Someone shouted, "Is this real?" Another, "He lied to us." Richard lunged for the console on stage. "This is sabotage. She's unstable. She." Sarah stepped back as alarms began flashing across the screen, the system beginning to collapse under a security override she alone had the authority to trigger. "Your empire wasn't yours," she whispered. "So it won't be your downfall either. It will simply correct itself." The system crashed entirely. Investors stood. Reporters surged forward. Cameras flashed like lightning. Richard, trembling, dropped to his knees. "Sarah, please. You taught me I had nothing worth keeping," she said. "Tonight, you learn what you were without me." As security escorted him away, the audience watched not with sympathy but cold clarity. His downfall wasn't dramatic. It was deserved. The event dissolved into chaos, yet amid the noise, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. Outside, the night air was crisp, carrying the echo of a city witnessing justice in real time. Alexander joined her on the steps. "You didn't destroy him," he said. "You revealed him." "He destroyed himself," Sarah replied. "All I did was stop cleaning up after him." They walked toward the waiting car, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement as if bowing them forward. Behind them, Sterling Dynamics' logo flickered, then died. A fitting end. And the beginning of something entirely her own. But this was only the first consequence Richard would face, and the next one would be far worse. When the chaos of that night finally settled, Sarah found herself standing alone on the balcony outside the conference hall. The air was cool, carrying the distant hum of traffic and the faint echo of voices still arguing inside. She rested her palms on the railing, letting the city lights blur into gold and silver streaks below her. Hours ago, she'd walked into this building carrying years of silence. Now, she walked out carrying only truth, and it was lighter than she expected. Alexander joined her quietly, but he didn't speak. He didn't need to. She'd spent her life shrinking to fit someone else's vision. Tonight proved she didn't have to. The world hadn't changed, but she had. And the man who once convinced her she wasn't enough had been undone by the very thing he underestimated. "Does it feel real yet?" Alexander finally asked. Sarah watched a single spotlight sweep across the skyline. "Not yet," she answered. "But I think it will." In the reflection on the glass, she no longer saw the woman forced to the margins. She saw someone who had stepped back into her own life and refused to budge. Someone who learned that the truth doesn't roar. It endures. Behind them, the Sterling logo flickered one last time before fading into darkness. Sarah smiled. "That's the last shadow I ever walk out of." If this story moved you, help it reach more people. Like the video, share it, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales for more powerful journeys.